Hey guys, Emirathi here, and I'm back with another build guide. Today we have the Wild Magic Runemaster. Now, if you haven't heard the term Wild Magic before, a little bit of a reference to D&D, and it's really just about like random, uncontrolled spellcasting, which is exactly what we're doing in this build. The main ability here is Runic Invocation, but instead of focusing on a particular invocation, we are letting a terror take the wheel as we randomly cast one of the 27 unique 3-word combinations every 2 seconds, or even slightly under. Rune Bolt will be our main mana generator and Rune Shuffler, and thanks to Runic Invocation spell cascade node, we're going to have a lot of other random spells proccing off, including Crosswalk, Glyph of Dominion, and Static Orb, all to boost our damage and provide some defensive support. This build is sweet. It has some great damage, amazing survivability, and really good scaling options. And I think one of the most important thing is there isn't one particular element that's too overpowering. So I know Runemaster, it's just come out, maybe has a few overpowered things. Hydrohedron, I'm looking at you. You're not going to run into trouble with nerfs on this one. I'm going to briefly run through the main parts of this build and how it works, but the planners are included below. I've got a starter one and an endgame variant. You can use this build while you are leveling, so long as you have access to Rune Bolt. Alright guys, let's get stuck into it. So let's have a look at our skills first, and the main one we're going to go through is Runic Invocation. So you can see here, this is the main setup. It's a little bit different to what you might be seeing in a lot of common builds. We're not going to go for the immutable order. Instead, we're actually coming down here and using Enigma. This is making it a transversal skill with a 5-second cooldown. But that cooldown can be reduced. You can see I've got a 2.2 second cooldown there. But by making it a transversal skill, we can look at our passives, and in the Runemaster tree, we get the access to Neverlate. So your next spell damage, you get like plus 16 spell damage and plus 16% crit, which that's a lot of flat crit. And then if you take 1 point in this node here, those bonuses are now going to apply to traversal skills. So Runic Invocation, being a traversal skill, now has access to that amount of flat and crit, so it's always going to crit pretty much. The main thing over here is the Rune Energy, and this is also a huge part of how this build works. So we have firstly spell cascade, so if we've got over 12 Runic Energy, when we cast it directly, we are going to use abilities on our bars, and this is how we're going to be casting our cold static orb, our fiery frost wall, and our lightning Glyph of Dominion. So if you have, like, let's say, there we go, I've got lightning, fire, lightning, there's a good chance that I'll get 2 casts of Glyph of Dominion and 1 cast of my fiery frost wall, and it works like that. Keep in mind, Rune Bolt is going to take up a chance to be cast as well, so it's just a little bit 50-50, but that's all part of the wild magic of these things. The other aspect is that you're going to get a lot of Runic Energy very quickly, and that's thanks to this node here, the Rune Power Core. So every time you shuffle, you are going to gain 1 Runic Energy on top of the stacking amount. And once you hit about 20 stacks, you're going to have a 100% chance to recast. So I go like this and start casting. You can see just how quickly that's going to stack up to like 36 there. Usually at about 20, that's what you'll get around the 2-second gap for your Runic Invocation. So you're going to get a repeat cast. You're going to get your spell cascades going off, and that's also going to give you like a good multiplier of damage. So that's the main part. The changing combination will also help reduce that cooldown as well. Alright, so for Rune Bolt, this is really just doing a few basic things. We want to cast it as fast as possible. The main one here is the focused rune words, and that is going to give you rune randomization every time you cast it. Now, if you look at the alt text, it says this randomizes the element, number, and order. It doesn't actually do the number, it just does, it just shuffles it, but will always retain the same amount. And I think that's how it should work. I wouldn't advocate for going down to the 1 and 2 runes just yet. The other thing we're doing over here is the amplified cascade. So we're making things tri-elemental. So let me just go 1, 2, 3, and then we'll start casting like that. So you can see all 3 elements coming through. Why that's important is these 3 rune words here. So you're going to have some very good uptime on them to give you 18 spell flats, as well as those nice little bonuses to go along with it. And of course, the other part of the Rune Bolt is the mana gain. So we'll put 4 points there, and then as soon as it turns to cold, you're going to get another 6 points there. I'm going to force it cold initially, and that's quite important. All right, for Crosswalk, we are converting this one into fire, and the main reason is for the brand here. So we get access to that brand. That's going to unlock the passive, so we can do more damage to bosses, and also it's just like another ailment for our alchemist ladle that we're using. Sorry, our mad alchemist ladle. I have the prepared wards node over here. You don't need it. This one is really strong. It's way too busted. It's probably going to get heavily nerfed. You don't need it. So if you don't want to use it, that's okay. And the last really sweet thing is the aspirants arrival. So when you see a flame ward, you want to go walk through it because it's going to make your next runic invocation do more damage and cost less mana. So that's a neat little thing, as well as just kind of give you a bit of cleansing ailments. And it's actually free because you never actually cast it, so its mana stays at 0 the whole time, even if it gets procced. And if you look over in the runic invocation, it's just going to look at the skill's current mana cost and consume that mana. And it sees it and it's always 0, so it's never actually going to change from that, which is pretty sweet. For Glyph of Dominion, we are doing atomization, we're doing some charge reflections for some all resistance there. That's going to help with our ward retention and just, you know, anything we're missing. Good amount of ward per second, which is great. And you know, you're going to have a lot of runic invocations that are going to be elemental damage over time, spell damage over time still. And this is just like a nice little bonus to them so that they don't fall too far behind. The shock chance is great. I'm really enjoying the stun every half a second node as well, and just some area there. Nothing too spicy here, but it is a really good use of what we're doing, and once again, getting some cleanses there. Static Orb is probably one of the more important ones, and the reason why is we're going to convert it into cold, and we want the lightning Aegis. This is the most important thing that we need, because we're going to use the lightning Aegis idols. So that's these ones over here. Increase cast speed when you have lightning Aegis. So once we have that, we're going to get a whole heap more cast speed to be able to pump out a lot more rune bolts, a lot more shuffling, a lot more runic energy, fast casting of runic invocations. That's the whole purpose, is why we're going a lot down the cast speed route. Okay, for passives, fairly simple setup so far. You can see that I've just got that. I'm not taking the 10 points in Knowledge of Destruction. This shouldn't look too unfamiliar if you've played a bit of Mage or Runemaster before. In the Sork tree, we're just going for the Arcane Momentum for some cast speed and the 5 points for Calculated Destruction. Intelligence is going to be very important to this build. So this is going to be all the percent critical strike chance that you need is just going to come from intelligence, so you don't need any of that on your gear. And then we have the plus 16 flat from Never Late. So, you know, your runic invocation is going to crit 100% of the time. You don't need a gear towards crit chance, which means that crit multi is going to be great. So we're picking up inscribed instruments for the 72 there, and we're going to be looking at putting crit multi on our gear wherever we can. Ancient Inscriptions is basically a go-to for almost every single Runemaster build. Once again, intelligence is great for this build because it does so much. It's going to give you percent damage, and it's going to give you cooldown recovery. We want as much as possible. And everything else on the tree should look fairly familiar to you if you have played Runemaster. As for items, you can see here, and in the footage, this is the build I'm using. The planner has got a lot more uniques. You don't need them. You don't need any of these items so far. It will do some good damage and have some good survivability before any of this comes into the picture. But it's really going to pop off once you've got access to a Twisted Heart. Frostbite Shackles, both of them are boss drops, so they're pretty easy to get, and I do recommend the Mad Alchemist Ladle as well, but you can just use a regular wand. For most of my gearing options, you can see that I'm just going crit multi, intelligence for the main options there. I'm not really too focused on like spell damage or elemental damage or anything like that. That's what I want. I want the cast speed as well. Another sweet thing is using Frenzy after you use the traversal skill on your boots. That's an experimental affix, just to give you Frenzy there. As for the suffixes, you just want to focus on cooldown recovery speed and cold resistance for the Frostbite Shackles. So that last line there, it's going to give you some ward retention. So you can see at the moment I've got 775% ward retention. You can go well beyond that. The last step would be to build around the fundamental criterion. And you can see there that we don't really know which rune we're going to get in the second slot. So rather than building for strength, dexterity, or attunement, we're just going to build for all attributes. So you can see that in the endgame planner why I've gone for some of the items that I've selected there, because we're just going to get, you know, 60 to 90% more damage with all our runic invocations just by going for all attributes. All right, well, that's the build, guys. Thank you so much. If you've got any further questions, just hit me up on Discord.